Playing right field for the Yankees, number 3, Babe Ruth. Playing first base for the Athletics, number 3, Jimmy Fox. Playing right field for the Giants, number 4, Mel Ott. Playing left field for the Red Sox, number 9, Ted Williams. Playing center field for the Yankees, number 7, Mickey Mantle. Playing center field for the Giants, number 24, Willie Mays. Playing third base for the Braves, number 41, Eddie Matthews. Playing shortstop for the Cubs, number 14, Bernie Banks. Playing right field for the Braves, number 44, Hank Aaron. Playing right field for the Orioles, number 20, Frank Robinson. Playing first base for the Twins, number 3, Harmon Killebrew. Playing first base for the Giants, number 44, Willie McCovey. Playing right field for the Yankees, number 44, Reggie Jackson. Playing third base for the Phillies, number 20, Mike Schmidt. These are the 14 men who have hit over 500 home runs. And this is the 500 Home Run Club.
They were called Thumper, the Killer, the Beast, Bad Henry, and the Babe. They came from California, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Alabama. The sons of sharecroppers, miners, farmers. One grew up in an orphanage. They were among the most remarkable athletes in American sports. In a very real sense, they were genuine American heroes. And out there, that was their field of glory.
In their field of glory, they are coming home. American heroes, and they're coming home.
Hitting a baseball well, consistently, is one of the toughest things to do in all of sports. Think about it. Pitch ball headed for the plate at about 90 miles an hour. You got a fraction of a second to decide to take, to swing, or in some cases, just to get the heck out of the way. If you fail 70% of the time, you're still hitting 300, and that's a sign of excellence. Yep, it's a tough game to master. You know, you can't talk baseball very long without talking numbers. Maris is 61, Williams 406, DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. Pretty soon the numbers take on a magic of their own. And in baseball, few numbers have the special ring of 500. 500 career home runs. It's about strength, reflexes, perseverance, the ability to bring a crowd to its feet. In the long history of our national pastime, only 14 men have topped 500 career home runs, and all of them are either in the Hall of Fame or on their way. Over the next hour, we're going to take a look at the 14 men who are members of this elite club and try and get an idea of just what it took to hit better than 500 lifetime home runs. To help us along the way, one of the members of the 500 Home Run Club, the Yankees' great Mickey Mantle. Good to see you, Mick.
It's nice seeing you, Bob, especially here in Yankee Stadium, my old home.
Got to be all kinds of great memories for you here.
Over the 18 years I played here, I had so many thrills I couldn't name them all.
And of course, a good portion of your 536 lifetime homers were hit right here. So many great Yankee power hitters wore the pinstripes here. Reggie Jackson, Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig. And in a sense, the man who started it all when we talk about the home run in baseball, the man for whom this park, in a sense, was built. It is, after all, the house that Ruth built. Before Babe Ruth, the game of baseball had a decidedly different look about it. Back then, a homer was a rarity. In fact, from 1911 through 1914, Frank Home Run Baker led the league each year, even though he never hit more than 12. With Ruth's arrival, that changed.
Say we're going to win any pennants or anything like that, but we're going to try to do our best and let the other fellas know that we're in the league.
Number 3, Babe Ruth.
Ruth broke in with the Red Sox in 1914 and became one of the game's great left-handed pitchers, but by the time Boston sold him to the Yankees in 1920, the Babe had already transformed himself into a new kind of ball player, a slugger. His 29 homers for the 1919 Red Sox were a major league record. His first year with the Yanks, he didn't just improve upon that mark, he took a quantum leap. A mind-boggling 54, and then 59 more in 1921. The Babe was a phenomenon, whether swatting them for the Yanks or barnstorming on his own. Huge crowds paid good money to see him, and they were never disappointed. Even at the tail end of his career, over 40 and overweight, the Babe was still able to pack him in. Since Ruth's emergence as a national celebrity came right on the heels of the 1919 Black Sox scandal, some people say he literally saved the game. At the very least, he revolutionized it. Consider this. Until Ruth, there were no foul poles. You didn't need them. Nobody ever hit him that high. In Ruth's prime, the Yanks gave the rest of the American League the brush off, cruising to pennant after pennant. Of course, his teammates helped, especially Lou Gehrig, who usually followed Ruth in the lineup, as the Bambino and the Iron Horse became the first of baseball's legendary power-hitting duos. Still, it was Ruth who usually stole the show. 11 times he hit over 40 homers, including 1927, when of course he had 60, a mark which stood for 34 years. In time, many of Babe Ruth's records have been broken, but his legend remains. In a way, he was among the first of America's true celebrities. More famous than presidents, and as he liked to point out, better paid too. His love for children was well known, perhaps because he never grew up himself. As his career wound down with the Boston Braves, there was one last flash of the old magic. He hit 3 homers in a game against the Pirates, the last being the first to clear the roof at Forbes Field. A week later, he retired. In 1948, his body ravaged by cancer, Babe Ruth was given a day at Yankee Stadium.
There's been so many lovely things said about me, and I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to thank everybody. Thank you.
Give him away, sir.
More than a half-century after his retirement, Babe Ruth remains a colossus in myth and achievement. 714 career home runs, the first homer in All-Star history, the called shot against the Cubs in the World Series. As it was once said, we shall never see his like again. Don Mattingly said once, when he was growing up in Indiana, he didn't even think Babe Ruth was a real person. He thought he was a cartoon character.
I was lucky because being here with the Yankees, we had an old guy, I know you know who he is. A lot of people didn't know about him, but his name was Pete Sheehy. And he was our clubhouse guy for like 55 years. He just died recently, and they named the clubhouse after him and everything. But he would tell, guys like me and Billy and Hank Bauer, some of the other old Yankees, some stories about Babe Ruth, and they were really interesting. I mean, like holding trains up for him. I mean, he was really bigger than life. If he wasn't on the train and it was time for the train to leave, they would hold the train for Babe Ruth, One time he told me, I used to have a lot of trouble getting in and out of the stadium too, because of the kids. You might have been hanging around out there yourself, I don't know. But anyway, one time Babe Ruth was going to try to sneak out, so they sent somebody out to his car, to get his car and take it around to the main entrance. And Babe Ruth walked down through the tunnel here and was crawling out backwards out of the window. And all the people were standing out there waiting on him. He doesn't know it, but he's crawling out backwards to get down to his car. And everybody's out there waiting on him. But there was a lot of really interesting stories told about him, about his drinking and carousing, you know.
You know, Ruth must have been really a physical freak. You take a look at him, especially toward the end of his career, with the big belly and the skinny legs, and all the stories about his eating and his drinking and carousing and getting no sleep, and he goes out and does it day after day.
Yeah, like he would, some guys say would eat 10 or 12 hot dogs before a game, you know, or maybe drink 4 or 5 beers or something. We don't have any way of knowing that all those stories are true, but you hear so many times that there's got to be something to it.
You know, you continued that link of Yankee greats. Of course, Gehrig played with Ruth, and then Gehrig was a teammate of DiMaggio's, and in Joe's last year, that was your first year, so in a way, the link was never broken. How much did the responsibility of being part of that continuing chain, how much did that weigh on your mind?
Well, when I first came up, I was supposed to be the next in line.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. I mean, the pressure was tremendous, not from playing ball, but from the New York press. In those days, we had about 12 or 13 newspapers, plus we'd have 15 or 20 magazine writers following us everywhere we went. That pressure really got to me. In fact, I got sent out that year, you know, as in 1951. I got striking out a lot. Everything was getting on my head. You know, I was hitting water coolers, and Casey was trying to cool me down and everything, but it just didn't work. You know, I just lost all my confidence, and he had to send me back down to the minors. We went to Detroit. He let the whole team go out on the ball field and then call me back in to tell me that he was sending me out. And he sent me out while everybody was out on the field so that it wouldn't be, you know, like me crying in front of them or something like that. But he did it in a great way, and he told me, he said, you just go down there and get your confidence back, and we'll have you back up here because you're too good not to be on this team. Casey was probably the most single influence in my life, besides my father, of course.
So you were 19 years old when you came up, and you're playing under one of the legendary managers, Casey Stengel. In that sense, you have something in common with 2 other members of the 500 Home Run Club. A Mel Ott, who was still a teenager and came up to find John McGraw as his manager with the Giants, and Jimmy Fox, who was not yet 20 when he came up with the Philadelphia A's under Connie Mack.
Number 3, Jimmy Fox.
Jimmy Fox came up as a catcher with the Philadelphia A's in 1925. But his fame really came as a first baseman with the A's and later the Red Sox. Fox had almost inhuman power. He was called the Beast, and in fact, Lefty Gomez once said of him, Jimmy Fox wasn't scouted, he was trapped. In one stretch, from 1929 to 1940, Fox averaged 40 home runs a season, including 1932, when he hit 58. The man they called Double X was a surprisingly good fielder for his size, but it wasn't his glove, but his bat that enabled him to become the first man ever to win 3 MVP awards. When he retired in 1945, he had 534 homers, second at that time to Root.
Number 4, Mel Ott.
At 5'9" and 170 pounds, Mel Ott was the smallest of the great home run hitters. He was a terrific outfielder and possessed great speed. But more than anything, Ott was a natural hitter who learned early on to take advantage of his uncanny ability to pull the ball over the Polo Grounds short right field wall, less than 300 feet from home plate. During his era, Ott was unquestionably the premier power hitter in the National League. 9 times he drove in over 100 runs. In 6 seasons, he led the league in homers. In 1945, he became the first National Leaguer to hit more than 500 homers. And by the time he retired to become the Giants' full-time manager in 1947, he was the all-time National League leader in home runs, RBIs, walks, and runs scored. Mel Ott was famous for 2 things: his high leg kick as he began his swing, and his even disposition. In fact, he was the guy rival manager Leo DeRocher pointed to when he first said, "Nice guys finish last." He might have been talking about the Giants' place in the standings, but he sure wasn't talking about Ott's standing as a ball player. You know, Mickey, Jimmy Fox was an incredibly strong guy, muscled balls out of ballparks. But Mel Ott was a little guy, and he had that weird swing with the right foot up in the air. How did he do it?
I didn't get to see Fox or Ott very much. I heard stories about him, like Lefty Gomez used to tell me that he thought Jimmy Fox could hit a ball as far as anybody. In fact, he showed me some spots here in Yankee Stadium in the upper deck, approximately a place where Jimmy Fox hit one, and it was almost out to the bullpen in those days, and it was in the third deck, and it must have been about 20 rows up, and that ball would have to have gone over 550 feet, I mean, if you measured it. Most of your home run hitters are strong in their legs and shoulders and forearms, and Fox was certainly that. Mel Ott, with that funny stance of his, I've seen pictures of him, and it was always hard for me to believe that he could time the ball. You know, what if he got his foot up in the air like this and it was a changeup? You know, he must have had tremendous timing. There's been a few guys like that. One of my first idols was Stan Musial, and he used to have that looked like a hunchback swing or something. But anyway, after I played with Joplin in 1950, I came to New York, and we'd work out, and then during the game we'd sit in the stands and watch them. And I saw Ted Williams hit 2 home runs in the shadows off of Vic Raschi, who was one of the greatest pitchers I ever saw. And from then on, I thought Ted Williams was probably the greatest hitter that ever lived.
When you and he were in the American League together, did you ever get a chance to talk hitting with him?
I sat by him at an all-star game one time, and he got to talking to me because I was a switch hitter. Whether this was my strong hand and I guided the bat with my left hand when I was hitting left-handed, or like if I was hitting right-handed, was this my strong hand and did I guide it with my right hand? And he was telling me about all these different things that he did. And I think it was about 2 weeks before I got a hit after I left there. I was trying to remember all the things he told me. And I didn't do very well for about 2 weeks, and I finally said, well, I can't hit like Ted Williams. I'm going to go back to just shutting my eyes and swinging.
You know, I've talked to Williams about you, and he has great regard for you, says you were one of the tiny handful of the best players he's ever seen. But his only criticism of you was, he said you went for the homer every time, and even a great hitter like Williams conceded with 2 strikes.
Well, that's the reason he hit for such a big average, and he's right about me. I was just wailing.
No science to it at all, huh?
No. I remember one time I struck out about 3 times, and I come in and sit down by Whitey on the bench, and I said, God, Slick, what am I doing wrong? He said, Slick, he said, I think you're shutting your eyes just before you lunge.
Number 9, Ted Williams.
Ted Williams was a perfectionist, a phenomenal hitter, as pure as they come. Still, Ted Williams believed in hard work, a native-born Californian who fit in well with the Puritan work ethic so prevalent in New England. In his prime, Ted owned Fenway Park, occasionally in the field, and especially at bat, where he plied his trade as one of the greatest hitters the game has ever known. Williams came to Boston in 1939 and immediately began to build on a legend that would eventually take him to the Hall of Fame. In fact, as one story goes, a teammate of Ted's, perhaps trying to inspire the cocky rookie, offered a glowing description of Jimmy Fox. "Wait till you see Fox hit," gushed the teammate, to which Williams replied, "Wait till Fox sees me hit." Boy, was he ever right. Williams not only hit, but despite a physique that earned him the nickname the Splendid Splinter, he hit for power too, smashing over 30 homers in 5 of his first 6 seasons, including 37 in 1941, when his hallmark .406 average helped him win the Triple Crown. Perhaps as much as any of his 19 seasons, 1941 showed just how good a hitter Ted Williams was. But consistency was his trademark. He dropped under 300 only once, and then he was 41 years old. By that time, Williams had overcome many obstacles, including run-ins with the Boston press and a tumultuous relationship with Red Sox fans. Then, too, there was the shift, originated by Cleveland player-manager Lou Boudreau, the defense stacked on the right side to try and thwart the great grooved swing of the Splinter. Occasionally, he figured out ways to beat it, but he never truly figured out a way to have a harmonious relationship with the fans and the press. But great ones like Ted Williams get away with such indiscretions. And in the end, all the hard work and dedication paid off with 521 home runs, the last coming in his final at-bat in front of those home fans at Fenway Park. Ted Williams had 521 lifetime homers and missed all or part of 5 seasons, World War II and then Korea. It's unbelievable.
I think that had he have gotten to play all the time, there's no doubt in my mind he was the greatest hitter of all time, and he did have a lot of power too. I saw him, you know, we talk about him having to play in Fenway Park where it's 380 to right center. I saw him a lot of times hit the ball way up in those bleachers there. So I don't think that it made that much difference. When he caught the ball, he had as much power as anybody.
You know, his career began in 1939. He's the only player whose career began between the late 20s and the early 50s who got the 500 home runs, because even the great players of that era, they couldn't get to it because of the war or other factors. Guys like Hank Greenberg, who missed 3 or 4 years, and Joe DiMaggio, who missed time in the service and had to play in this ballpark.
Joe DiMaggio, my first year was his last year, and I must have seen him hit at least 20 balls that went over 440 feet here at Yankee Stadium that they caught out on the track. It was 457 to left center. I don't know how far it was behind the monuments, but in 18 years, I only hit 2 over there, and to the right of the monuments was 461, and that's a long ways. I really believe if DiMaggio would have played like in Detroit, a regular ballpark, he would have hit way over 500 home runs.
What effect did Yankee Stadium have on your total?
I figure that I hit at least 10 balls a year that went over 440 feet that were caught. I remember one game here against Harmon Killebrew. He hit 3 balls between the monuments and the 457 sign, and I caught all 3 of them. The last one I caught, I threw it to him as I went by second base, and I thought he was going to throw it back at me. He was so mad. But anyway, he said, "How could you play in this park?"
Let's talk about tape measure home runs, because there were a few that you hit that no ballpark ever could hold. What are the ones that stand out the most in your mind?
Well, when we talk about the hardest ones I ever hit, I think the hardest ball I ever hit was off of Bill Fisher here one night. I hit a line drive that hit the facade that only liked about that much going out, and I've always felt like that if it would have been just a little bit higher, it would have made it because it was still rising. I hit the facade again in one time against Pedro Ramos, but that was a fly ball. I mean, it was just like, you know, I don't think it would have made it because it had already gone as far as it was going to go. The one that they measured in Washington off of Chuck Stobbs, I don't know if you remember the old Griffith Stadium or not, but it wasn't as tall as the new ballparks, and it was only kind of like, almost like 2 decks. And we had about a 40 or 50 mile an hour wind blowing out that day. The flagpole was like bent double, and I did hit it good, but they measured it at 565 feet. That's one of the longest ones I ever hit.
Why did you always run with your head down when you hit a home run? Were you so naturally shy that you just wanted to get out of the spotlight?
I hated to see anybody in any sport, even when I was in high school or anything. It would make me mad if a guy beat us in a basketball or football or anything and went running off the field, jumping up and down and screaming, "Yeah, we beat him," you know. It always made me mad, and I always thought to myself, I'll never show up anybody. And I always felt like that if I did go around like with the high fives and all that stuff, that I would be showing the pitcher up. And I just couldn't do it. The Yankees, George Weiss, the general manager, used to try to get me, like tip my hat when the crowd would stand up and applaud, coming across home plate to tip my hat. I just couldn't do it.
In batting practice before a game at Yankee Stadium or on the road, would you have home run contests sometimes with your teammates? See guys doing that today a lot.
They do?
Yeah.
No, we didn't. I don't know who would have challenged me anyway.
Number 7, Mickey Mantle.
Indeed, who would have challenged Mantle? See, when it came to being challenged, Mickey Mantle would always respond, and when it came to hitting homers, well, the Mick usually had a bit of an edge there too. He was strong, swift, and immensely talented, and there wasn't a kid who grew up as a Yankee fan in the 50s who didn't think of himself one day starting in center field for the perennial world champions. Mickey started his career in 1951 as a shy 19-year-old country kid from Oklahoma. He went on to become the greatest switch hitter of all time, his era's ultimate symbol of one of the best baseball teams ever assembled. Not only could Mantle hit the ball with incredible power, he could also run as fast as anybody. Some say that at his best, before the injuries took a terrible toll, Mantle got to first quicker than anybody from the left side of the plate. And despite 3 knee operations, Mantle could also cover a great deal of ground in the outfield. Not too many people outside New York rooted for the Yankees in Mantle's day, but all of them, even President Eisenhower, loved to watch Mickey play. Most of all, they respected him, because on top of everything else, Mantle was courageous. He constantly played in pain, and for that, his teammates held him up as a great inspiration, and fans admired his drive and spirit. Above all, Mickey was a winner. 12 times in his first 14 years, Mantle and the Yanks found themselves in the World Series, and the Mick responded by establishing records in 5 Fall Classic categories, including the most homers with 18. But statistics don't tell you nearly enough about Mickey Mantle. Here was a man who played through pain and adversity, through bum knees and bandages, to become one of the greatest home run hitters of all time.
You know, Mickey, the great thing about New York in the 50s is if somebody missed one of your home runs, you had a good chance of flipping on the radio or television or walking over to the Polo Grounds and catching one hit by Willie Mays.
I think probably one of the biggest thrills I ever got was like when people used to compare me and Willie and even Duke, you know. And I always felt like I was doing just as good as Willie for a long time, but there at the last, he went past me like I was standing still. And nowadays when I go around at dinners or luncheons and stuff like that, people get to ask you questions, you know, at the end. And that's always one of the questions. Who do you think was the better, you or Willie? Well, there was a couple or 3 years that I was better than Willie, but when you look at it career-wise, you have to look at the bottom line. And Willie had a way better bottom line. He ended up with 660 home runs to my 536. He scored more runs. He played 24 years almost injury-free. He could do everything. He was a great fielder, a great base runner. He could steal home, steal third. He was just a great all-around. I'm not sure he's not probably the greatest all-around ball player of all time.
Number 24, Willie Mays.
If ever there was a man worthy of the cliche, he could do it all, it was Willie Mays. Of Willie, Giant manager Leo DeRocher once said, he could catch a rabbit at full speed, throw a strike from 400 feet, and hit the ball a mile. As if to prove DeRocher a prophet, Willie did things with his powerful bat that only a handful of players ever accomplished, like hit 4 homers in a single game, which he did against the Braves in Milwaukee in April of 1961. With his great skills and baseball instincts, things seemed to come easy to Willie Mays, like the way he adapted to Candlestick Park. He'd been primarily a pull hitter at the Polo Grounds, but Mays said he taught himself how to swing differently in San Francisco. In fact, many of his homers at the stick went to where the wind blew out, right center field. Not that Willie needed much help hitting home runs. From 1954 to 1965, the Say Hey Kid averaged 40 a year, topping 50 twice. He hit his 500th late in the 65 season, and then early in 66.
For Willie Mays, and they mobbed him as he went into the dugout and Candlestick Park to a man.
After becoming the leading home run hitter in National League history, Mays didn't stop at 512. A few years later, he became only the second man to hit 600, along the way toward finishing at 660. Ted Kluszewski once said, "I'm not sure what charisma is, but I get the feeling it's Willie Mays." I get the feeling Klu was right.
Mick, a few years ago, Terry Cashman had a big hit with that song, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, which was about you, Mays, and Snyder, but also about baseball in the 50s in general. People are nostalgic for that era in baseball history. And the fact is, the greatest collection of power hitters in the game's history broke into the major leagues during that decade. You had you and Willie in 1951. A short time after that, Eddie Matthews comes up, Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, Frank Robinson, Harmon Killebrew came up during the 50s. And if you stretch it a little bit, 1959 was the rookie year of Willie McCovey. There are 14 members of the 500 Club. 8 of them, more than half, came up between 1951 and 59.
Must have been some bad pitching along about that.
My thoughts are, first of all, you had some of the older, smaller ballparks were still around, and they're disappearing now. The color line was broken, and more than half of the 8 players we mentioned are black players, and they didn't have their opportunity until about that time. Mm-hmm. And most of them played into the early 60s, and you had the first expansion, which did dilute pitching a little bit. And you had guys swinging for the home runs a little bit more than they did. You know, the last vestiges of that whole old style of baseball, put the ball in play, hit the line drive, gave way to a theory in the 50s of trying to get the ball in the air, and the home run was emphasized more.
Number 41, Eddie Matthews.
The Braves had not one, but 2 members of the 500 Club, and it might be surprising to some that in Milwaukee, Eddie Matthews out-homered Henry Aaron. Matthews topped the 40 mark 4 times in his career and hit over 30 in a season 10 times. But there was more to his game than just slugging. He was a good fielder and a complete team player who helped make the Braves a National League powerhouse in the 50s. In 5 of the 6 seasons Matthews and Aaron played together during the 50s, Matthews led the team in homers. And during that same span, he averaged 37 round trippers a season to Hank's 30. In both 1957 and 58, Matthews found himself in the World Series, and in 57 he helped the Braves upset the favored Yankees in 7 games, homering to win Game 4 in the 10th. It's hard to think of a Hall of Famer as being underrated, but in the case of Eddie Matthews, that might be true. He was, after all, one of the game's all-time great third basemen.
Number 14, Ernie Banks.
Of all the members of the 500 Club, Ernie Banks would seem to be the unlikeliest. After all, no other shortstop in the history of baseball even came close to hitting the number of homers Ernie Banks did. But then again, old Let's Play 2 liked to do things a little differently. Like when he won back-to-back MVP awards in 58 and 59. At the time, no other National Leaguer had ever won the honor in consecutive years. And what made it even more remarkable was that in neither of those seasons did the Cubs do any better than finish 5th. It's true that Banks benefited from playing at Wrigley Field, but he hit almost 43% of his 512 homers away from home, and during one 6-season stretch from 1955 to 1960, he hit more than 40 homers 5 times. Ernie played first base in the second half of his career, and the Cubs contended a few times, but Banks never made it to the World Series, though he did make it to the 500 Club at home on a day beautiful enough to play 2.
Number 20, Frank Robinson.
Frank Robinson's stance defined his style, always crowding the plate, daring the pitcher to come at him. Although not thought of first and foremost as a home run hitter, Robbie finished with 586, launching himself in that direction in 1956 when he tied a then rookie record with 38. The Reds foolishly traded Robinson to the Baltimore Orioles in 1966, and in his first year there, he hit 49 home runs, won the Triple Crown, and was named the American League MVP, the first and only player to win the award in both leagues. That same year, Robinson went on to lead the Orioles to a world championship as they swept the Dodgers 4 straight. It's likely that as time passes, Frank Robinson will be remembered mainly as the first black manager, but in a way that would be a shame, because he deserves to be recalled as one of the greatest hitters and competitors the game has known.
Number 3, Harmon Killebrew.
Take a look at Harmon Killebrew, and one of the first things that comes to mind is how much his physique resembles that of Jimmy Fox. Stocky and incredibly strong, the killer took aim at outfield fences around the American League. And even at an early age, he knew there wasn't a stadium built that could hold one of his drives.
Gilly, does any ballpark look very tough to you?
Well, I can't think of any that is real tough except Yankee Stadium. You have to pull the ball there. It's got a big center field. Detroit is one of the better parks to hit in, I think, in the league.
You haven't seen any that you don't think you can hit the ball out of?
No, I don't think so.
Killebrew, of course, was right. No ballpark was too big for him. Not spacious Griffith Stadium in Washington, where he began his career in earnest by hitting a league-leading 42 homers in 1959. Nor Metropolitan Stadium in Minnesota, where he gained his greatest fame. All told, he led or tied for the American League Home Run Championship 6 times and topped 40 8 times. Killebrew's trademark was his quiet consistency. For a kid who grew up in Idaho and played much of his career in Minnesota, that seemed to suit him well, just like his 573 career home runs.
Number 44, Willie McCovey.
Willie McCovey had both the good and bad fortune to play with Willie Mays. Good because on the Giants, hitting homers seemed to be contagious. Bad because Mays' greatness tended to overshadow all those around him. But if there was ever anyone big enough or talented enough to emerge from under that shadow, it was 6'4" Willie McCovey. In 1963, the powerful stretch hit 44 homers and became the darling of the San Francisco fans. Then in 1969, he hit 45 and won the National League's MVP award. McCovey was also as clutch as they came. His 18 career grand slams are the most in National League history. And he also hit 16 pinch hit home runs. Willie McCovey retired with 521 homers. He's the leading left-handed home run hitter in National League history.
In the case of the Giants and the Braves, you've got teammates who are each members of the 500 club. You've got Mays and McCovey, Aaron and Matthews. And for all intents and purposes, Lou Gehrig, had his career not been cut short, he would have been a member. He hit 493 lifetime, and he's playing along with Babe Ruth. So it's not coincidental.
No, I think it helps. It helps to have two guys. A pitcher can't concentrate on one guy, and besides that, it takes a little pressure off of yourself. You know, if you've got another guy that's hitting as many home runs as you, and it also causes a friendly competition. You know, like especially in '61, I was wanting to beat Roger. There's no doubt about it. You know, I mean, I'd give anything to hit 61 home runs that year. But once I found out that I couldn't do it, I was very happy to see him do it.
Mickey, when you were 25, you had more home runs than Babe Ruth had at a comparable age. Of course, he was pitching then for the Red Sox. But did you ever give serious thought to hitting 700 home runs, to becoming the #1 guy all time?
No, I didn't. By that time, you know, I had already hurt my leg, and I could see that I wasn't going to get to play that much. I never thought that I would probably ever hit even 600 home runs. But after I got to 500, then I started looking at the guys that was just ahead of me, you know, like Ott and Fox and Ted Williams, my idol. And each time I went past one of them, it was a big thrill for me, you know. And I could see that I was getting up there. I would have liked to have gotten up around 550 or something like that, but I never had any inclination at all of ever getting to 700.
How about the second to last home run of your career?
Off Denny McLain.
Yeah.
McLain, I think, I'm not sure what the score was. I think he was ahead 6-0. He won 30-something games that year. Anyway, he knew that was going to be my last time up in Detroit. And he came up to home plate, or almost up to home plate, and said, let's let him hit one, you know. Of course, that doesn't mean you're going to hit one. You know, I can stand out here with a bag of balls and Spud Murray, that used to be our batting practice pitcher, and not hit one. But he did. The first pitch he threw me was a fastball, you know, right where I would have loved to have it, and I took it. See, sometimes you don't know if he's kidding or not, McLean. And anyway, the next pitch, and I looked at Freehand, he says, yeah, he wants you to hit one. So the next pitch, I swung too hard at it and popped it up, foul out. And then the next one was, I caught it pretty good and got it in the upper deck. That was my 535th home run, put me past Jimmy Fox. But I hit one more, which I'm proud of, because I wouldn't have wanted to go past Jimmy Fox with one that somebody let me hit.
When you retired, for a brief time, you were number 3 on the all-time list. Now, people forget Jimmy Fox had stood alone in the second spot. Ruth was at 714, Fox was 534 for years and years. And then eventually Willie Mays went past Fox into second place, and you inched past him at 536. And the day you retired, you were 3rd all-time. Ruth, Mays, Mantle. But I remember you saying at that time, I can only savor this for a little while because here comes Hank Aaron.
Oh, yeah. When you think about Hank Aaron, you think home run. He's a great all-around baseball player.
Number 44, Hank Aaron.
It's true that for a long while, Hank Aaron never seemed to get as much attention as some of his more celebrated contemporaries of the 50s and 60s. But then again, he never seemed to need it. Quiet and self-assured, Aaron let his bat do all the talking. Remarkably durable and consistent, Hank Aaron rarely had a single season in which he dominated baseball, but year after year he piled up stats which eventually took him to the top of almost every offensive category. The 1957 National League MVP and 1959 batting titleist, Aaron never hit 50 homers in a single season, but he did hit 40 or more 8 times and averaged 33 a season for his 23-year career. At one time, Ruth's record of 714 home runs seemed unreachable. But after a while, it was Aaron, and not Mays or Mantle, who wound up chasing the Babe.
The beginning is looking and dream about Babe Ruth every night. I feel like every time I go to the plate that I got to hit a home run. But really, to be very frank with you, I don't think about a home run until someone brings it up. Of course, I have to say that quite natural. It's my job to go up and look for that pitch and try to hit it out of the ballpark.
He's sitting on 714. Here's the pitch by Downing. Swinging. There's a drive into left center field. That ball is going to be out of here. It's gone. It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
A little after Aaron passed the Babe, Japan's finest player was preparing an assault of his own. With a swing reminiscent of Mel Ott's, Sadaharu Oh combined tremendous physical ability with a spiritual approach to baseball. And when he finished playing in 1980, he had 868 homers.
All right, there's the international king, but let's get back to the United States. The 2 most recent people to be included in the 500 home run club, Reggie Jackson and Mike Schmidt. How about Reggie? Now, you both wore the Yankee pinstripes, but you were cut from a different cloth.
About a year ago, I was in California doing a game for the Yankees, and he went past me in home runs. I had 536. He had his 537th the day before. So when I came into Anaheim, they wanted me to present Reggie with a plaque that said he had 537 home runs, one past me. Anyway, in presenting him with the plaque, I said, Reggie, for somebody that didn't make contact any more than you did, that's a lot of home runs. Of course, he knew I was getting on myself, too. But I always used to tell him, when I retired, I had 1,710 strikeouts, which was 200 more than Babe Ruth, I think, and way more than anybody else. But I always used to tell Reggie, I said, if you hang around long enough, you'll get me off of the list of the strikeouts.
Which he did easy, because he struck out more than 2,000 times in his career. Strikeouts, I think, are a little bit overrated when you talk about a slugger. Now, it's great if you can slug like Ted Williams and hardly ever strike out, or Joe DiMaggio, but most sluggers are going to strike out, and if they get an equal or close to equal number of walks, I think the number of times they strike out is something that people make too big a deal out of.
Me and Whitey figured out, or Whitey figured it out one time. I struck out 1,710 times and I walked 1,800 times. That's 3,500 times. And if you take a Major League Baseball player, on the whole, goes to bat about 500 times a year. So if you take 500 into 3,500, I played 7 years without hitting a ball.
Number 44, Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson's career began with the A's in 1967, but it was this titanic shot in the 1971 All-Star Game which truly thrust him into the limelight. Jackson was the centerpiece of the great Oakland teams of the 70s. The A's won the American League West 5 straight times and took 3 consecutive world championships. Reggie was also a traveling man, the first of the new breed of pay-for-play free agent sluggers. Aside from Oakland, he also spent quality time in Baltimore, New York, and of course California. And it was with the Angels that he hit his 500th. No doubt Jackson will be best remembered for his 5 seasons in New York. 3 times he helped the Yankees get to the World Series. And in 1977, he equaled Babe Ruth's single-game World Series record with 3 homers in the clincher against the Dodgers.
You ever see Mike Schmidt play much? I mean, he came up after your career was over, National League guy.
No, I was going to ask you about him. I've seen him on TV, and I've seen him hit a couple, and he's got a great swing.
Short, quick swing.
Oh,
Boom.
strong. He's strong, yes.
He's hit 35 or more home runs 11 times in his career, and that puts him in a category with Aaron and with Ruth. He's won Gold Glove after Gold Glove at third base, especially when he first came up. He could really run, and I think he has the kind of personality where he's never been that emotional or that dramatic. He's not in Reggie Jackson's class for drama and theatrics. He's not in Ernie Banks' class when it comes to just being an outgoing guy that wins the fans over in that way. He didn't hit tape measure shots like you did. All he did was year in, year out, keep doing it. And eventually, when the numbers got so overwhelming, people woke up and said, wait a minute, this guy might be, all things considered, the best third baseman in history.
Number 20, Mike Schmidt.
Mike Schmidt made a career out of hitting monstrous home runs. The kind of home runs that could deflate a team in an instant and ruin any pitcher's day. After a poor rookie year in which he hit under 200 with just 18 homers, Schmidt more than made up for things in the years that followed. A league leader 8 times, Schmidt is one of only a tiny handful of players to hit 4 in a single game, a feat he accomplished at Wrigley Field in 1976. In 1980, Mike led his Phillies to their first ever World Championship. And on April 18, 1987, he entered our exclusive club.
The 3-0 pitch. Swing a long drive! There it is! Number 500! The career 500th home run for Michael Jack Schmidt! And the Phillies dugout comes swarming out to home plate.
When you really get a hold of one, when you hit a 500-footer, how does it feel?
Well, it's as far as I'm concerned, the hardest single thing in sports is to hit a baseball. And when you hit a home run, especially one that goes over a roof somewhere, and everybody stands up and goes, "Oh my God!" You know, and they still talk about it. You know, I get a bigger kick out of it now than when it happened. But it felt it gave me goosebumps. You know, I can sit at home and watch a video, you know, and see myself hit a home run. That is a big thrill.
Here's the pitch. Mantle swings. There's a tremendous drive going into deep left field. It's going. It's going. Way back. Yes, here we go. Home run. This ball is going to go.
So, Mickey, all these 500 home run hitters were unique personalities, and yet they did have a few things in common, a few keys to doing it.
Most all of them come up real young. I think that's one of the main things. You got to come up young. You got to be healthy. You got to be strong, and you've got to play in a ballpark that is, conducive to hitting home runs.
So somehow you made it despite not having all those things in your favor. A few, but not all of them.
Well, I was very lucky, Bob.
There's one last thing I'd like to say before we go, Mickey. You know, I grew up watching you play here at Yankee Stadium, watching the games on TV, listening to the games on the radio. I know you've seen this before, but this is the 1958 Mickey Mantle baseball card that I've had since I was 6 years old, because after all right-thinking Americans should have a religious artifact with them at all times. And I'm sure there are some people out there who are watching this program now, some old-timers, who saw Jimmy Fox or Mel Ott or Babe Ruth as they marched past 500 home runs lifetime. In Ruth's case, past 700. And people who are more contemporaries of mine, those who grew up around Milwaukee, well, they watched Hank Aaron mature as a baseball player. In a sense, he grew up in Milwaukee, and even when the Braves moved to Atlanta, those Milwaukee fans followed Aaron's chase as he eventually overtook the Babe and became #1 on the all-time list. And then appropriately, Hank Aaron wound up going back to Milwaukee to finish his career with the Brewers. Same thing happened with Jimmy Fox. He went back to Philadelphia. Willie Mays wound up back with the Mets to finish in what was really his hometown, New York. And then in the case of a guy like Mickey Mantle in New York, or Ernie Banks in Chicago, Ted Williams in Boston, well, the fans there couldn't possibly imagine them being anyplace else. They felt as if those players were part of them, as if in a sense they belonged to them. And when you consider the accomplishments of all 14 of these men, they belong now not only to the teams for which they played, they're an indelible part of baseball history. For Mickey Mantle, I'm Bob Costas. Mick, thanks for being part of it.
Thank you, Bob.